Chancellor, hello.
Hello, great to be with you.
Lovely to see you. It's such a loud. The thing about Labour conferences, it's always very loud.
Well,
so we're kind
this
of
year
shouting
it's
at each
louder
other.
than ever. I mean, that's what being in government does. But I've been coming to these conferences since the late 1990s when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown were in power. And for the last 14 years, I've been coming along whilst we've been in opposition. And the atmosphere this year, the Labour conference with a Labour government, it really is electric.
And there was a big bit in your speech about being the first female Chancellor in 800 years. I'm just wondering, like last night, did you sleep well? Were you nervous? Were you excited? What was it like?
Those lines, they meant a lot to me. And I know they mean a lot to a lot of women. After I gave the speech and I was walking back through the exhibition area where we are now, so many women stopped me and said, I'm going to show that speech to my daughter, or I'm going to show that speech to my granddaughter and show them that they can achieve anything they want to achieve. And I think that line where I said, for our daughters and granddaughters, there should be no ceiling on their ambition. I think that is something that still resonates for so many women. And again, a lot of women were saying, when I started my career, I was one woman. When I started my career, I was the first woman in the office to wear a trouser suit. And she said, I know it sounds like a small thing, but things have changed so much. And seeing you become Chancellor shows that journey continues.
And of course, when you talk about being the first female Chancellor, then the follow-up to that is, do you fancy being the first Labour female Prime Minister?
The job
day?
I've always wanted to do is Chancellor of the Exchequer. I think I've probably told you this story before about when I was at university. One of my good friends, Helen, got me a picture for my birthday of Gordon Brown in a frame and put it on my my mantelpiece in my student halls of residence. So I think ever since then, this is my dream job. I worked in economics and finance before becoming a member of Parliament, and for me, this is my dream come true, to be able to stand here as the first Labour Chancellor in 14 years and the first ever female Chancellor of the Exchequer.
And if you've gone out and bought a picture of Rachel Reeves for your mantelpiece, do let us know. Newscast at bbc.co.uk. We'll let you know if anyone gets in touch. Anyway, we'll talk about the content of the speech loads, I promise. But just in terms of the delivery, you had a couple of protesters and hecklers. What goes through your mind when you see the random guy standing up trying to have a go at you?
Well, obviously, I sort of flashback to last year at conference when someone got on the stage and glitter bombed Keir. Actually, it was the making of his speech, and he took his jacket off and rolled his sleeves up. But you know, we plan for these speeches. They're big moments for us. I put my heart into it. Of course, you don't want it interrupted by some protester. But Labour conference, the hall came together and got to its feet to drown out the noise of the protesters. And the staff here at our conference did a really good job of getting them out of the hall, because that's not the moment for that sort of protest. I'm always willing to listen to people who don't agree with me on something. But this is a moment at our conference to get across that positive message from Britain. I didn't want to be interrupted by that.
So protesters should not do that, even though they've got the right to protest and the right of free speech, just not in that way.
I don't think so. I don't think that is appropriate. And you saw the mood in conference was very much against that. They wanted to hear from the first Labour Chancellor in 14 years. This is an exciting moment for our conference. We want to celebrate. Yes, of course, there's going to be difficult decisions. We're not always going to agree, but that's what the debate is for at conference. You know, you'll hear the debate on conference floor, and everyone's going to be agreeing with each other, and nor should they. But that is the way to make your view known in a democratic party, which is what the Labour Party is, not through that sort of protest.
The other thing that happened during your speech was the Royal College of Nursing saying that their members had voted to reject their 5.5% pay increase. When did you hear about that? Did you know before you went on stage that that's what they were going to do?
No, I didn't. And I do understand why nurses, after 14 years of pay not keeping up with the rising cost of living, that they feel that their finances are still very stretched. I hope they also see, though, that in a difficult economic situation, a difficult fiscal position, I accepted the recommendations of the independent pay review bodies to give the first meaningful real terms pay increase to nurses and and other public sector workers in 14 years. I was really proud to make that choice. Not an easy choice given the difficult economic circumstances, but I thought it was the right thing to do to accept those recommendations. And I know that Wes Streeting, our Health Secretary, wants to work with our nurses to ensure that they are properly respected and treated well. I think it was a good offer that we put to them, and I hope we can work through this.
Does this not show the danger of if you give junior doctors a much higher pay increase than nurses, then nurses are going to be really angry?
Well, look, we wanted to bring an end to the industrial action, which cost patients dearly, with so many cancelled appointments and operations, but also cost our economy dearly and had a big impact on our public finances. The cost of industrial action last year alone in the NHS cost us £1.8 billion. We needed to bring to an end that industrial action and give people the treatment in the NHS that they need and deserve. And I don't think nurses and doctors begrudge each other getting a pay rise. We accepted the independent pay review body recommendations, not just for the NHS, but also for our teachers, our armed forces, our police, our prison officers, and many more, because I felt it was the right thing to do to bring an end to that industrial action, to help with the recruitment and retention problem, and to ensure that kids get a good education, patients get a decent service in our National Health Service.
Just another little conference process thing. Was there meant to be a vote today on a motion that included some criticism about means testing the winter fuel payment, and that debate's now been shunted back to Wednesday, so a big distance away from your speech? Is that you trying to kind of shut down debate about that?
No, I'm not involved in those sorts of decisions. That's Conference Arrangements Committee, which is elected by members of the party to choose that committee. But this is a democratic party. If members want to vote on something, they'll be able to have a vote on it, and it will come at some point this week. I think you heard in conference today that although not everyone might agree with every decision I make, there was a respect for the fact that for the first time in a long time, you've got a government that's being honest about the scale of the challenges in the public finances. And although people might not agree with every decision I make, they recognise that I'm trying to do the right thing in very difficult circumstances.
And if whenever that vote happens, conference says, yeah, we're not happy with the winter fuel payment being means tested, what, you just ignore them?
Well, look, let's see what happens in the vote whenever that comes this week. But Parliament has already voted. Parliament voted a few weeks ago to means test the winter fuel payment. So the poorest pensioners, those on pension credit, will continue to get it. And of course, we've recommitted to the triple lock, not just for 1 year, but for the duration of this Parliament. The triple lock means that pensions are £900 more than they were a year ago. I'll announce in the budget that the new state pension will rise by around £460 again next year, and over the duration of this Parliament, the new state pension is likely to rise by £1,700. So we're protecting the incomes of pensioners, but in the difficult circumstances we've inherited, we've chosen to restrict winter fuel payment for those pensioners most in need.
Right, loads of things I could ask you about this speech, and I'll sort of rattle through as many as we can in the time we've got. Bringing forward the rollout of the free breakfast clubs in England, you said it would be hundreds of schools from next April. Is that kind of like 200 or 900?
Well, we're going to work with schools to see which ones have capacity and desire to bring those forward. We also think it will help with the national rollout from next September to allow some schools to go first and to trial it and make sure that it works really well in making sure that every good child gets a really good start to the day. It will be part of our strategy to reduce child poverty and also a boost to our economy. We want to get economic inactivity down. We want more people to be working and working the hours that they want. And free breakfast clubs at primary schools, it gives parents, and particularly mums, because it is still mums who do the majority of childcare in our country, will enable them to work a little bit more, have more money in their pockets to support themselves and their families. So I was really pleased to be able to work with Bridget Phillipson to bring forward the rollout of those breakfast clubs.
Okay, when you talk about working class kids having richer lives, what do you mean?
This is something that I'm absolutely passionate about. My mum and dad were primary school teachers. I went to my local comprehensive during the 80s and 90s, and it was a time when there were cuts in education. My mum was a special needs teacher, but then special needs funding was cut, and so my mum became a classroom teacher. That meant a lot of kids that had getting support from people like my mum no longer did. And I see today, after 14 years of Conservative government, things like music in schools, drama in schools, sports in schools, all cut to the bone. So kids from more privileged backgrounds whose parents can afford the tuition, can afford the classes at weekends and after school, they still get those opportunities, but working class kids don't. And it makes me so angry that kids are being denied those opportunities. So that's what I mean about kids being able to realise their potential. The joy of learning a sport, learning a musical instrument shouldn't be preserved of better off kids from better off families. I want all kids to be able to achieve their potential, realise their dreams. I had a line in my speech about kids shouldn't be succeeding against the odds. The odds shouldn't be stacked against working class kids, and that's what I mean by expanding opportunity and ensuring that I know my time in office has been a success if there are more kids from ordinary working class backgrounds being able to live those richer, more fulfilled lives and able to thrive.
There was also a line in your speech, and I did have it open on my laptop, but it's gone to sleep now, classic, about getting the Treasury to change how it values public investments. So it's not just looking at the costs. Tell me a bit more about what you're getting at there. And that could sound quite technical, so don't make it too techy, please.
I'm sure you can manage it, Adam. So under the previous government, their fiscal rules didn't differentiate between spending on day-to-day things, whether those are wages or the day-to-day costs of running public services.
Spending, that's called current spending.
They didn't differentiate between that and capital spending, which has a long-term return for our country. And as a result, when there were difficult decisions to be made, the previous government always cut capital spending, which meant it was harder then to grow our economy because we weren't investing in the infrastructure, the new technologies, the new investment opportunities. And so the fiscal rules that I have committed us to in our manifesto and will set out in the budget does differentiate between the two. We will make the difficult decisions to balance day-to-day spending with tax receipts. We're going to get debt down as a share of our GDP, but subject to that, we will free up that space for investment in capital. And the point that I'm making is about the Treasury and government looking at the value of investment, not just the cost of it, because actually the cost of inaction, the cost of missing out on those investment opportunities is missed economic growth, missed jobs, missed opportunities, missed wealth creation in Britain. And our number one mission, this new Labour government's number one mission, is to grow our economy. And the way to grow the economy is through investment, public and private, working together to unlock the massive opportunities that exist.
Just to be clear though then, so your second fiscal rule in the budget, will it still be debt as a share of GDP decreasing at the end of 5 years, using the same measure of debt as we use now and the same 5 years that we've been talking about for the last few years?
We'll set out the details at the budget, but in our manifesto we committed to balance day-to-day spending with tax receipts and get debt down as a share of GDP within a 5-year period. We're not going to renege on our manifesto commitments. We're really clear, and I said in my speech, the
I don't see how that leaves you any room then to do anything differently.
Well, look, we'll set out the precise details in the manifesto. Our fiscal rules are already different from the previous government in that day-to-day spending and capital investment are treated differently.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter if you've still got the second fiscal rule about debt falling. That's the big constraint on you at the end of 5 years.
And it shows how important it is to get a grip of the day-to-day spending, because unless you do that, you won't be able to free up that investment. But I'm not going to make those short-term decisions that the previous Conservative government did, which was always to cut capital spending to make the sums add up. If you do that, you'll find at the next budget and the next spending review, the trade-offs are even harder than they were before. So we will properly incentivise that investment in infrastructure and also leveraging in private investment. That's why we've created a national wealth fund. The work that Mark Carney did for the Labour Party in opposition of how to structure the national wealth fund to leverage in £3 of private investment for every pound of public investment putting in. So that's about getting good returns for taxpayers' money by bringing in that private investment investment as well, whether it's in industries like carbon capture and storage, green hydrogen, floating offshore wind, gigafactories for electric vehicles. There's lots of money out there to be invested. I want that investment. I want those jobs to come to Britain, and under our plans, with our National Wealth Fund, our planning reforms, our pensions reform, I am confident that we can get that investment, get those jobs here in the UK.
A couple of bits of speculation. Are you thinking about getting rid of the single person's discount for council tax?
Look, I'm not going to get into speculation on individual measures in the budget, but I was really clear in the manifesto. I recognise that working people have faced for too long deteriorating living standards, because every time there were taxes to be raised, the Conservatives piled those taxes on working people. I don't want to be that sort of government.
Sounds like you're not going to do that then. The freeze on the income tax thresholds, that runs out or stops in 4 years' time. You're going to be working on a 5-year budgeting horizon. Would you extend it by another year?
The point of the budget is that you can consider all of these things in the round. Some of it will be based on the latest forecasts for economic activity, household incomes, and also the public finances. You know, Adam, that we face a situation where there's a £22 billion black hole in the public finances. So there are difficult decisions to come on tax and welfare and spending. But as I set out in the conference speech today, if we can get a grip of the public finances, return stability to our economy, combine that with the reform that we are making to unlock private investment in our economy, I am confident that the prize at the end of that is economic growth. And with economic growth comes more money in the pockets of working people, better jobs in all of our communities, and money for our public services without increasing taxes, because the tax receipts come in from a growing economy.
Last question. The great thing about conference is the people you bump into. And I was walking past here about an hour ago, and I saw Andy Serkis, the actor who played Gollum in Lord of the Rings. And I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I'm lobbying for a tax credit for visual effects that Jeremy Hunt was going to extend, but which they ran out of time to do. And he said, ask Rachel Reeves if she's going to help the visual effects industry.
Well, I haven't met Gollum
wants
yet.
to know.
Well, I look forward to meeting Gollum and many other of our delegates and visitors here at conference. You're right, conference is a great opportunity to meet old friends. I've been coming to Labour Party conference since 1997 was my first one, and of course that was the first conference when we had a Labour government after 18 years, and I remember being in that hall listening to Tony Blair and to Gordon Brown as Chancellor, and to be here today as the first Labour Chancellor in 14 years and the first female Chancellor of the Exchequer. Sometimes I have to pinch myself to know that it's real. It's an amazing opportunity, a huge privilege for me, and I intend to repay the trust that people have put in me.
And presumably now you've done the big speech, you can go and have some drinks and go to the parties.
Well, today
Or were you
is
doing
business.
that anyway? I don't know if you were doing that anyway.
You obviously don't know me very well, Adam. But today is business day at conference, and so I'll be spending time with some of the business representatives from businesses big and small, sending that message loud and clear. With this Labour government, Britain is open for business. We want investment, we want wealth creation here in the UK, and the jobs, the prosperity that comes along with that.
Chancellor, thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam.
Newscast from the BBC.